Imagine this. You're a student. You sign up for a 2-week psychological study, a simulated prison. One coin toss makes you a prisoner, another, a guard. Within hours, your peers, ordinary people, just like you, start to change. Guards become tormentors. Prisoners become broken. This isn't some horror film plot. This was the Stanford Prison Experiment. It was so shocking it had to be shut down in just 6 days. But its chilling insights into human behavior, they still echo over 50 years later. What happens when good people are put in an evil place? The answers are way more disturbing than you might think. Back in the summer of '71, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo and his team at Stanford University had a big question. Are prisons awful because of the people inside them? Or do the prisons themselves twist people into behaving brutally? They wanted to see what was stronger, the situation or who you are as a person. So they got 24 male college students, all checked out as psychologically and physically healthy, just normal guys. Then a flip of a coin decided their fate. Prisoner or guard in a fake prison, built right in the basement of Stanford's psychology building. And they really tried to make it feel real. The guys picked as prisoners, they were arrested for real at their homes by actual Palo Alto police officers. Charged with a felony, fingerprinted the whole deal. Blindfolded, and then off to the Stanford County Jail. Once there, they were stripped, deloused, and forced into these ill-fitting smocks with ID numbers. A nylon stocking cap to make it look like their heads were shaved, and a chain locked around one ankle. Names? Gone, replaced by numbers. A deliberate move to strip away their identity, what psychologists call deindividuation. The guards got their own getup, khaki uniforms, reflective sunglasses so no one could see their eyes, and wooden batons. Their job? Keep order. They had a lot of power to run the prison as they wanted. But one big rule, no physical violence. Psychological intimidation, though, that was fair game. Zimbardo himself decided to be the prison superintendent. Looking back, that was a controversial move. Was he a neutral researcher or part of the experiment? The plan was for 2 whole weeks. Nobody, not even Zimbardo, saw the psychological nightmare that was coming. And things changed fast, alarmingly fast. Day 1, the guards, who seemed a bit awkward at first, started flexing their authority. Day 2, things exploded. The prisoners rebelled. They barricaded themselves in their cells, yelling at the guards. How did the guards react? With force. They used fire extinguishers to bust into the cells, stripped the prisoners naked, took away their beds, and threw the ringleaders into solitary, which was just a tiny, dark closet. What began as just trying to control the situation quickly turned into non-stop harassment and abuse. The guards made up rules on the fly and forced prisoners to do humiliating things like endless push-ups or cleaning toilets with their bare hands. Sleep? Forget about it. They used sleep deprivation, waking prisoners up for counts in the middle of the night where they had to shout their ID numbers. These counts got longer and longer, becoming just another way to humiliate them. Some guards really got into their roles. It almost seemed like they enjoyed the power. One guard, who the prisoners nicknamed John Wayne, actually admitted he was channeling a brutal warden from the movie, Cool Hand Luke. He was often the one leading the charge with the aggressive stuff. And the other guards? Even if they weren't starting the abuse, they mostly just stood by and watched. A pretty chilling example of conformity. The prisoners, on the other hand, started to become prisoners. They grew more and more passive, obedient, and emotionally wrecked. Some even started to rat on other prisoners to the guards. That's a pretty clear sign of how much they were breaking down and how powerful the whole situation was. For everyone there, the line between playing a role and reality was vanishing fast. You couldn't deny the psychological damage being done to the prisoners. Just 36 hours in, prisoner number 8612 started to lose it. Uncontrollable crying, fits of rage. They eventually let him go. Once Zimbardo and his team believed he wasn't faking it to escape, which, by the way, was their first thought. The whole setup was so intense, so psychologically draining, that it seems like the participants forgot they could just leave. Even Zimbardo admitted he got sucked into his role as superintendent, so much so that he lost his scientific objectivity. And the guards? Their abuse just got worse. They set up a privileged cell for the good prisoners, giving them better food and conditions. It was a classic divide and conquer tactic, and it worked to break prisoner unity. Punishments got more and more degrading. There were even reports of prisoners being forced into simulated sexual acts. Then prisoner number 819 had a complete breakdown. He had to be released, especially after Zimbardo actually tried to talk him into staying, even when the guy was clearly distressed. That was a real wake-up call for Zimbardo. When number 819 said he couldn't leave because he was worried about what the other prisoners would think, Zimbardo saw just how deeply they'd all fallen into these roles. So, the experiment that was supposed to run for 2 weeks, it was shut down after only 6 days. What finally pulled the plug? Christina Maslek. She was a psychologist and Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time. She visited the mock prison and was absolutely horrified by what she saw. She confronted Zimbardo straight up about the ethics and the obvious suffering. Her fresh eyes were what Zimbardo needed to see how bad things had gotten, how the abuse and distress had become normal inside that little prison bubble. He finally realized it had all spiraled out of control. The nightmare was way too real. Even though it ended early, the Stanford Prison Experiment gave us some profound and pretty disturbing insights into our minds. The main takeaway? The situation you're in has incredible power to shape how you act. These were ordinary, healthy college students. But put them in a fake prison, give them roles, and boom. Guards turned into tyrants, and prisoners became passive and traumatized. This really backed up the idea that it's the environment, not just your personality, that often drives behavior. So, what was going on psychologically? A big one was deindividuation. Think about it. The guards had uniforms, those mirrored sunglasses, and titles like Mr. Correctional Officer. All of that stripped away their personal identities, making it easier to do things they'd never normally do. Same for the prisoners. Those smocks, numbers for names, the fake shaved heads, it all made them lose their sense of self, leading to helplessness and feeling like they weren't real people anymore. When you lose that self-awareness and personal restraint in a group, extreme behavior becomes much more likely. Another huge factor was conformity to social roles. People quickly fell into line with what they thought a guard or prisoner should be like. The guards acted how they imagined guards act, and the prisoners just became submissive and defeated. The power imbalance built into the prison setup was also key. The guards had almost all the power, and for some, that unchecked power seemed to corrupt them, leading to worse and worse abuse. The prisoners, with no power, pretty much showed what we call learned helplessness. They just gave up resisting because nothing they did seemed to change how they were treated. The whole thing showed, pretty vividly, how easily people can internalize these roles, sometimes forgetting it was all just an experiment. This experiment really makes us look at some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and how much our circumstances can affect us. If this look into human psychology has grabbed you, and you want to understand more about what drives us, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations of fascinating psychological phenomena. Your support really helps us keep bringing these important stories to light. Right away, the Stanford Prison Experiment sparked a huge ethical firestorm. And honestly, those debates are still going on. The participants went through serious psychological distress. Some even had emotional breakdowns. One of the biggest criticisms? Lack of truly informed consent. Even Zimbardo admitted he had no idea things would get so extreme. And the prisoners? They weren't told they'd be arrested at home. That wasn't in the contract they signed. Plus, their right to leave was iffy. People reported being discouraged from quitting, and some genuinely thought they couldn't leave. That's a major ethical red flag. Zimbardo himself later owned up to these ethical problems, saying the experiment did violate ethical guidelines for human research. But the ethics weren't the only issue. The way the study was done, its methodology, has also been heavily criticized. Critics point out that Zimbardo, playing both lead researcher and prison boss, created bias. Did he influence the guards? Did it make him wait too long to stop it? Then there's something called demand characteristics. This means the participants might have just been acting how they thought the researchers wanted them to act. More recently, in 2018, a French author, Thibault Letexier, dug into the archives. He, and others since, found evidence suggesting Zimbardo and his team actually coached the guards, telling them how to be tough and mess with the prisoners psychologically. That kind of blows up the whole idea that the guards' brutal behavior just happened on its own, doesn't it? Some former participants have even said they felt like they were play acting, at least partly. And get this, in 2001, the BBC tried a similar study, a partial replication, and got very different results. In the BBC version, the prisoners actually fought back, and the guards never really formed that abusive united front. This suggests the Stanford outcome wasn't a sure thing. Leadership and group identity matter a lot. All these criticisms and different findings, they show just how complex this whole thing is. Maybe the original conclusions about the power of the situation were a bit too strong, or at least need a more nuanced look. People are still debating if the SPE was a real experiment or more like a dramatic demonstration. But even with all the valid criticisms about ethics and methods, the Stanford Prison Experiment is still a huge deal in social psychology. It really changed how we talk about human behavior. Why does it still grab us? Because it is such a shocking picture of how situations and roles can just crush a person's individual morality and character, if the conditions are right. Its findings have been used to try and explain real-world horrors, like the abuse at Abu Ghraib prison. It's a cold reminder that good people can do terrible things when they are stuck in toxic situations with too much power, or no power at all. The study brought concepts like cognitive dissonance to the forefront, showed how powerful authority can be, and highlighted the dangers of rigid hierarchies. Now, newer studies and critiques tell us that conformity isn't always behind, and that leadership and group dynamics really matter. But the core warning from the SPE, that still stands. It hammers home how vital ethical oversight is in research, and why we need strong systems to stop abuse in places like actual prisons and the military. Interestingly, Philip Zimbardo later switched gears a bit. He started looking not just at how situations corrupt us, but how people can actually resist those bad influences and become heroes. He called it the heroic imagination. That adds another layer to its legacy, right? Understanding the darkness is key, but so is figuring out how to encourage the good in people. For all its flaws, the Stanford Prison Experiment made psychology, and all of us, really face some uncomfortable truths. How easily regular folks can become part of cruelty or even dish it out. And it stressed creating good environments, or good barrels, instead of just blaming bad apples. Maybe it was, as some say, more of a morality play dressed up as science. But it still has this grip on us, because it pokes at those huge questions about good, evil, and how much the world around us molds who we are. So the Stanford Prison Experiment. 6 short days, but a deep dive into a psychological abyss. It showed us, terrifyingly, how easily power in a situation can change who we are and what we do. Regular students, playing guard and prisoner, quickly turned into abusers and the abused. It forced the study to end early, but it became a landmark in social psychology and a magnet for debates about ethics and methods ever since. We've walked through how losing your identity, conforming to roles, and just the crushing weight of a bad environment can create an absolute nightmare. Now, the criticisms about Zimbardo's influence in participants may be just playing along. They're valid, and they mean we need to look at the findings carefully. But the experiment's core message, the chilling takeaway, still hits hard. The line between good and evil isn't as solid as we would like to think, and the situations we're in can push us in ways we don't even realize. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Under the right or wrong circumstances, what could any of us do? The Stanford Prison Experiment isn't just a story about a flawed study. It's like a mirror, showing us the darker possibilities within ourselves. And it screams for us to be vigilant against the abuse of power wherever we see it. What are your thoughts on the Stanford Prison Experiment? Do you believe the situation, or the individual holds more power over behavior? Share your perspectives in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're keen to explore more about the tangled web of the human mind, take a look at our other videos on really key psychological experiments. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what we explore next.